Have you ever wondered why some people seem to pick up new languages effortlessly, while others struggle for years with little progress? The secret may be hiding in plain sound. Welcome to a revolutionary approach that most language learners completely overlook: the transformative power of listening. Hello there, language enthusiasts. Welcome back to the LMJ English channel, where we unlock the secrets to natural, effortless English mastery. I'm thrilled you've joined us today for this eye-opening exploration into why listening might be the missing piece in your language learning puzzle. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly language learning breakthroughs. Your journey to fluency is just one click away. Today, we're challenging everything you thought you knew about language acquisition. Forget the endless grammar drills and vocabulary flashcards for a moment. Instead, let's explore how training your ears might be the fastest route to training your tongue. The world's most successful polyglots have discovered this secret, and now it's your turn to harness this powerful approach. The silent revolution in language learning. Have you ever noticed how a baby learns to speak? For months, even years, they simply listen. They absorb the sounds, rhythms, and patterns of their native language long before uttering their first meaningful word. This natural process reveals a profound truth about language acquisition that many adult learners overlook in their rush to speak. In language classrooms worldwide, speaking is often prioritized above all else. Students practice dialogues, perform role plays, and prepare presentations, all valuable activities, certainly. But beneath this speaking-focused approach lies a paradox. Those who listen more ultimately speak better. This counterintuitive reality represents a silent revolution in how we should approach language learning. Consider the striking statistics. Research from a University of Cambridge reveals that learners who devote 60% of their study time to focused listening activities achieve fluency up to 40% faster than those who concentrate primarily on speaking and grammar. Similarly, a longitudinal study from the University of California found that students who engaged in regular, structured listening practice showed remarkable improvements not just in comprehension, but in pronunciation, vocabulary retention, and even grammar accuracy. Why then do so many language learners struggle despite years of dedicated study? The answer often lies in an imbalanced approach. Many learners spend countless hours memorizing vocabulary lists, studying grammar rules, and practicing speaking with limited exposure to authentic listening input. They develop theoretical knowledge of the language without developing the neural pathways that process real-time speech. Think about your own language learning journey. How much time do you spend actively listening compared to other activities? For most learners, listening comprises less than 20% of their practice time, despite being the foundation upon which all other language skills are built. This imbalance creates a frustrating experience. You may know thousands of words and dozens of grammar rules, yet still struggle to understand native speakers in real-world contexts. Your brain hasn't been trained to process the language as it's actually spoken, with its natural rhythm, connected speech patterns, and contextual variations. The solution isn't complicated, but it requires a fundamental shift in perspective. By prioritizing listening, making it the cornerstone of your language learning approach rather than an afterthought, you activate the brain's natural language acquisition mechanisms. This doesn't mean abandoning other aspects of language learning, but rather rebalancing your approach to mirror the natural way humans acquire language. Imagine learning to play a musical instrument without ever listening to music, or learning to cook without ever tasting food. Sounds absurd, doesn't it? Yet many language learners attempt the equivalent by minimizing their listening practice. The silent revolution in language learning begins with recognizing this fundamental oversight and taking steps to correct it. As we explore deeper in the following sections, you'll discover practical techniques to harness the power of listening, from neuroscience-based approaches to everyday strategies you can implement immediately. The journey to fluency begins not with speaking, but with training your ears to truly hear the language in all its authentic complexity. The brain's hidden language mechanism. Inside your brain lies an extraordinary system designed specifically for language acquisition. A complex network of neural pathways that evolved over thousands of years to help humans communicate. Understanding how this system works reveals why listening forms the foundation of all language learning. When you listen to a language, your brain processes sound waves through multiple specialized regions. First, the temporal lobe analyzes the acoustic patterns, distinguishing between relevant speech sounds and background noise. Then, Wernicke's area works to extract meaning from these sounds, while the prefrontal cortex integrates this information with existing knowledge. This intricate dance of neural activity happens in milliseconds, largely beneath conscious awareness. What neuroscience has discovered in recent decades is particularly fascinating. When exposed repeatedly to speech patterns in a new language, your brain literally rewires itself. Through a process called neuroplasticity, neural networks reconfigure to recognize and process the unique phonological features of the language you're learning. This physical restructuring of your brain creates the foundation for all other language skills. Dr. Patricia Cole, a leading researcher in language acquisition at the University of Washington, explains it this way. The brain is changed by experience. When you listen to a new language, your neural tissue physically reorganizes to accommodate the patterns of that language. Her groundbreaking research demonstrates that intensive listening exposure creates neural maps for speech sounds, maps that become increasingly detailed with more exposure. This biological reality explains why children listen extensively before speaking. Their developing brains are building these essential neural maps, creating the foundation for language production. By age 3, children have typically listened to approximately 20 million words in their native language before developing fluent speech. This massive input phase allows their brains to build the complex models needed for comprehension and eventually production. Studies comparing passive listening, having a language playing in the background while doing other activities, versus active listening, focused attention on comprehending what you hear, reveals striking differences in outcomes. While passive exposure can help familiarize you with the overall sound pattern of a language, research from the University of Barcelona shows that active listening is 5 to 7 times more effective for developing neural pathways that support comprehension and speaking ability. During active listening, your brain engages in what neurolinguists call prediction processing, constantly anticipating what comes next based on contextual cues and language patterns. This predictive activity strengthens connections between words, grammar structures, and meanings, essentially training your brain to process the language automatically rather than through conscious translation. This helps explain why many successful language learners report experiencing a sudden click moment when a language suddenly starts making sense without translation. This phenomenon represents the brain's neural networks reaching a critical threshold of development, allowing for direct processing of a language rather than filtering it through your native tongue. Understanding these neurological processes gives us valuable insights into effective language learning methods. Rather than viewing listening as merely one skill among many, we can recognize it as the fundamental substrate upon which all other language abilities develop. The brain's hidden language mechanism begins with listening, And by aligning our learning strategies with this biological reality, we can accelerate the entire language acquisition process. As your neural pathways become increasingly attuned to the patterns of your target language, through consistent listening practice, you'll notice improvements across all language skills, often in ways that feel almost magical, but are actually the predictable result of your brain's remarkable capacity for adaptation. Breaking the translation barrier? Do you mentally translate everything you hear in your target language? This common habit creates what linguists call the translation trap, a processing bottleneck that slows comprehension, hampers speaking fluency, and prevents true language acquisition. Breaking free from this constraint represents one of the most significant breakthroughs in advanced language learning. When you constantly translate in your head, you force your brain to perform an exhausting three-step process. First, recognizing the foreign words. Second, converting them into your native language. And finally, processing the meaning. This creates a mental traffic jam that makes real-time conversation nearly impossible. Native-like fluency requires direct association between foreign words and concepts, bypassing your mother tongue entirely. Michael, an English learner from South Korea, described his experience. For years, I would hear English translated into Korean in my mind, think of my response in Korean, and then translate back to English before speaking. By the time I formulated my response, the conversation had moved on. This frustrating experience is remarkably common, but entirely avoidable with the right approach. The key to breaking this pattern lies in developing direct concept-to-language connections, a process that begins with focused listening activities. When you repeatedly hear words and phrases in context, your brain gradually forms direct neural pathways between the sounds and their meanings, without routing through your native language. One particularly effective technique involves identifying objects around you directly in your target language. Instead of seeing a chair and thinking chair, silla, Spanish word for chair, train yourself to go directly from the object to silla. This simple practice, performed consistently with everyday items in your environment, begins rewiring your brain's language processing pathways. Another powerful method involves immersing yourself in context-rich listening situations where translation becomes impractical. When watching a fast-paced film or participating in a group conversation, the speed of interaction forces your brain to process the language directly. Although initially challenging, these experiences create the cognitive pressure necessary to develop new processing strategies. Sandra, a Brazilian polyglot who speaks 5 languages fluently, shares her breakthrough moment. I was watching a German film without subtitles and realized I was laughing at the jokes before my brain had time to translate them. That's when I knew something had changed in how I was processing the language. Research from the University of Edinburgh's Cognitive Science Department confirms these anecdotal experiences. In a study tracking brain activity of bilingual participants, researchers found that beginning language learners showed activity in translation-related brain regions when processing their second language. However, advanced learners demonstrated activity patterns nearly identical to native speakers, with direct activation of meaning-related brain areas without engaging translation regions. Interestingly, this transition often occurs gradually and then suddenly, a phenomenon cognitive scientists call phase shift learning. For months, you might feel stuck in translation mode, and then seemingly overnight, you begin processing the language directly. This shift represents your brain crossing a threshold of neural connectivity, where the direct pathways become strong enough to bypass translation entirely. Several factors accelerate this transformation. Emotional engagement with content significantly enhances direct processing. When you're genuinely interested in what you're listening to, your brain forms stronger connections between words and meanings. Similarly, multisensory input combining listening with visual cues creates more robust neural linkages. The success stories of learners who've broken the translation habit share common elements: consistent exposure to authentic listening materials, patience through the initial struggle phase, and creating situations that make translation impractical. By applying these principles, you can free yourself from the mental bottleneck of constant translation and experience language as native speakers do, as a direct connection to meaning rather than a code to be deciphered. The immersion advantage, creating your language bubble. The best way to learn a language is to move to a country where it's spoken. We've all heard this advice. While living abroad provides obvious immersion benefits, the reality is that most language learners can't relocate their lives to another country. The good news? You can create powerful immersion experiences wherever you are, no passport required. Creating a language bubble in your everyday environment involves strategically designing situations where using your target language becomes necessary rather than optional. This manufactured immersion produces many of the same cognitive benefits as living abroad, triggering the brain's adaptive learning mechanisms through linguistic necessity. Clara, a successful Japanese learner who never left Chicago, transformed her apartment into what she calls her Tokyo studio. She labeled everyday objects in Japanese, changed her phone and computer interface to Japanese, and established a strict rule. Certain rooms were Japanese-only zones, where she forced herself to think and speak exclusively in her target language. My kitchen became my Japanese sanctuary, she explains. I would narrate everything I did while cooking, from chopping vegetables to washing dishes, forcing myself to figure out how to express these actions without reverting to English. This concept of creating no-escape language scenarios represents a psychological turning point for many learners. When you deliberately eliminate the option of falling back on your native language, you activate the brain's problem-solving mechanisms. Unable to use the easy solution, your mother tongue, your brain becomes remarkably resourceful at finding ways to express ideas with whatever language tools you currently possess. In today's digital world, creating immersive environments has become more accessible than ever. Virtual immersion strategies might include joining language exchange communities where you interact exclusively in your target language for set periods, participating in special interest groups conducted in your target language, cooking classes, book clubs, gaming communities, using language-specific streaming services to create an authentic media environment setting target language-only time blocks during your day, even if just for 30 minutes initially. Carlos, an English learner from Spain, found his breakthrough by joining an online gaming community where communication happened exclusively in English. At first, I was terrified and could barely participate, he recalls. But the desire to be part of the team and contribute during gameplay created an urgent need to communicate. Within weeks, I was speaking more fluidly than I had after years of traditional study. What these examples illustrate is the power of necessity. When understanding and producing a language becomes essential rather than academic, your brain prioritizes developing those neural pathways. This principle explains why emergency situations often produce surprising language abilities in learners. When communication becomes critical, hidden capabilities emerge. Importantly, research shows that these manufactured immersion experiences work best when they include an element of psychological safety. The anxiety of total immersion can be counterproductive if it triggers the brain's stress response. The ideal approach combines the pressure of necessity with an environment where making mistakes feels acceptable. Marina, a language coach who specializes in creating immersive learning experiences, recommends starting with islands of immersion, controlled environments where you commit to using only your target language for specific activities or time periods. Begin with something enjoyable where you already have some vocabulary comfort, like cooking or a hobby, she advises. As your confidence grows, gradually expand these islands until they connect into a continent of immersion in your daily life. The neuroscience behind this approach is compelling. Studies using functional MRI scans show that learners in immersive environments activate more regions of the brain simultaneously when processing language compared to those in traditional learning settings. This multi-regional activation creates stronger neural networks, resulting in better retention and more natural language production. Perhaps most encouraging is the discovery that even short periods of intense immersion can produce lasting benefits. A 2-week intensive immersion experience, studies show, can advance your language processing abilities more than months of conventional study. By creating your own language bubble, regardless of your geographical location, you can harness these cognitive advantages and transform your learning journey. Beyond words, capturing the rhythm and music of language. Languages are far more than collections of words and grammar rules. They're musical compositions with distinctive rhythms, melodies, and emotional textures. This musicality, what linguists call prosody, often represents the final frontier separating advanced learners from native-like fluency. Through dedicated listening, you can train your ear to capture this essential but often overlooked dimension of language. Every language has its unique sonic signature. French, with its forward-moving stress pattern and nasal vowels, creates a melodic flow often compared to a gentle stream. German, with its distinctive sentence structure and glottal stops, produces a rhythmic precision like a well-calibrated timepiece. English, with its stress-timed rhythm and reduced vowels, creates a pattern of strong and weak beats similar to jazz improvisation. These prosodic features, stress, intonation, rhythm, and pitch, combine to create the authentic sound of a language. Martina, a linguistics professor who specializes in language acquisition, explains, many advanced learners who have mastered vocabulary and grammar still sound non-native because they're applying the prosodic features of their first language to their second. It's like playing a Mozart piece with the rhythmic interpretation of a heavy metal song. Technically correct notes, but entirely wrong feeling. Research from the University of California's Phonetics Laboratory confirms this observation. In perception tests, native speakers identified recordings as foreign-accented, primarily based on prosodic features rather than pronunciation of individual sounds. In other words, the musicality of speech often matters more than perfect pronunciation of individual words. Listening carefully to native speakers reveals these musical patterns. Notice how English speakers compress unstressed syllables between stressed ones, creating the characteristic dieta rhythm. Observe how questions in Mandarin rise and fall in pitch, conveying meaning through tonal changes. Pay attention to how Italian speakers use melodic contours to express emotion, almost singing their words rather than merely speaking them. Beyond the musicality, listening also reveals cultural expressions and idioms that rarely appear in textbooks, but form the living heart of a language. These culturally embedded expressions often carry connotations and associations that can only be absorbed through extensive listening to native content. Take the seemingly simple English phrase to give someone a hand. A literal translation misses the idiomatic meaning of offering assistance. Similarly, the French expression avoir le cafard, literally to have the cockroach, means feeling depressed, a connection that makes little sense without cultural context. Through active listening to authentic content, you absorb these expressions in their natural habitat, understanding not just their literal meaning, but their cultural weight and appropriate usage contexts. Developing an ear for these natural speech patterns requires a particular kind of attentive listening. Anna, a polyglot who speaks 7 languages with remarkable authenticity, describes her approach. I don't just listen for meaning, I listen for music. I notice where native speakers pause, how their pitch rises and falls, which syllables they emphasize. Then I practice imitating those exact patterns, even if I don't understand every word. This technique, known as prosody shadowing, involves repeating not just what native speakers say, but exactly how they say it, mimicking their rhythm, stress patterns, and intonation like a vocal mirror. Research from the University of Tokyo shows that learners who practice prosody shadowing for just 20 minutes daily over 8 weeks significantly improved both their comprehension and their perceived naturalness when speaking. Modern technology offers powerful tools for this kind of practice. Apps that visualize speech patterns can provide immediate feedback on your intonation compared to native models. Slowing down audio while preserving pitch allows you to hear subtle features that might otherwise pass too quickly. Repeated listening to the same content, first for meaning, then for musicality, trains your brain to recognize patterns it previously filtered out. As your ear becomes attuned to these musical elements, you'll notice a fascinating phenomenon. Words that once seemed to blur together in rapid speech suddenly become distinguishable. This happens because your brain has internalized the rhythmic expectations of the language, allowing it to predict and identify word boundaries even in fast speech. The journey to capturing the music of a language isn't quick, but it's transformative. When you move beyond words to embrace the rhythm, melody, and cultural resonance of a language, you cross the threshold from speaking a foreign tongue to inhabiting it, expressing yourself not just accurately, but authentically. The practical toolbox, everyday listening methods. Transforming listening theory into daily practice requires a systematic approach. This practical toolbox provides concrete methods suitable for every level of learner, from beginner to advanced, allowing you to build powerful listening habits that integrate seamlessly into your everyday life. For beginners, structured listening exercises create the foundation for future growth. Start with specially designed slow, clear recordings that exaggerate the natural rhythm and pronunciation of a language. Resources like slow news broadcasts, language-specific podcasts for beginners, or graded audio readers provide comprehensible input that challenges without overwhelming. Sophie, who struggled with French comprehension initially, shares her breakthrough strategy. I began with 5-minute audio clips designed for beginners. I would listen 3 times, first for general meaning, then focusing on identifying words I recognized, and finally for words I didn't know but could guess from context. This progressive approach built my confidence while training my ear. As your skills advance, podcasts become particularly powerful tools for listening development. Unlike scripted language materials, podcasts feature authentic conversation with natural speech patterns, hesitations, and overlapping dialogue. Start with topics you're already knowledgeable about. Your existing context knowledge supports comprehension while you adapt to natural speaking speeds. The shadowing technique, pioneered by polyglot Alexander Argels, offers another structured approach to listening practice. Select a short audio clip with accompanying text. Listen while reading along. Then listen again while repeating what you hear with just a slight delay, like an echo. This technique simultaneously trains your ear, your pronunciation, and your speaking fluency. When I first tried shadowing, recalls Marcus, an English learner from Germany, I felt ridiculous and couldn't keep up. But after just 2 weeks of daily 10-minute sessions, I noticed dramatic improvements in my ability to process speech in real time. My brain was learning to predict language patterns. For intermediate learners, audiobooks paired with their text versions provide an excellent progression tool. Begin by listening while reading, then gradually transition to listening-only sessions. This bridges the gap between controlled learning materials and authentic content, allowing you to venture into native-level materials with appropriate support. The technique of narrow listening, developed by language acquisition specialist Stephen Krashen, involves listening repeatedly to different content about the same topic. This creates a scaffolding effect. The repeated vocabulary and concepts from one piece support your understanding of the next, allowing you to handle increasingly complex discussions within a familiar domain. Visual media offers particularly rich opportunities for listening development. Lisa, a Spanish teacher with innovative methods, recommends a graduated approach. Start with subtitles in your native language, then progress to subtitles in the target language, and finally watch without any subtitles. This progression builds confidence while gradually removing scaffolding. For advanced learners, specialized listening activities help refine specific skills. Dictation exercises, writing down exactly what you hear, sharpen your ability to distinguish similar sounds and recognize word boundaries in connected speech. Content with regional accents or specialized vocabulary challenges your comprehension flexibility, preparing you for real-world variation. The concept of audio journaling provides another advanced practice method. Record native audio content that particularly challenges you. Listen repeatedly over several days and keep notes on your improving comprehension. This metacognitive approach helps you identify specific listening weaknesses and track progress over time. Modern technology offers innovative tools to enhance traditional methods. Apps with variable playback speeds allow you to gradually increase tempo as your processing ability improves. Voice recognition software can provide immediate feedback on your shadowing accuracy. Streaming platforms with language-specific content deliver endless authentic materials sorted by difficulty level and topic. The key to effective implementation is consistent, deliberate practice rather than marathon sessions. Research from the University of Melbourne shows that daily 20-minute focused listening sessions produce better results than occasional 2-hour blocks. This aligns with cognitive science findings on distributed learning. Regular exposure creates stronger neural pathways than condensed cram sessions. Creating a personalized listening routine involves assessing your current level, selecting appropriate content that interests you, establishing a consistent practice schedule, and gradually increasing difficulty as your skills improve. The most effective approach combines structured exercises with authentic materials, balancing challenge and comprehensibility to maintain motivation while ensuring progress. By incorporating these practical methods into your daily routine, whether during commutes, exercise, household chores, or dedicated study time, you transform ordinary moments into powerful language acquisition opportunities. This systematic approach builds the neural architecture necessary for effortless comprehension, preparing your brain to process language automatically rather than through conscious analysis. Common obstacles and how to overcome them. The path to listening mastery inevitably includes challenges, moments of frustration, plateaus, and seemingly impenetrable barriers. Understanding these common obstacles and equipped with strategies to overcome them, you can transform potential roadblocks into stepping stones toward fluency. Perhaps the most universal challenge is coping with the speed of authentic speech. Native speakers typically deliver between 150 to 220 words per minute, a pace that can seem overwhelming even to intermediate learners. This rapid flow creates the illusion of a single, unbroken sound stream rather than distinct words, leaving many learners feeling defeated after just a few sentences. Javier, who struggled with English comprehension despite years of study, explains, "It wasn't that I didn't know the vocabulary. When words came individually or in my textbook, I recognized them. But in natural conversation, everything blurred together. It was like trying to catch individual raindrops in a downpour." The solution lies in progressive speed training. Begin with audio materials at 70 to 80% of natural speed, focusing on identifying word boundaries and linking patterns. Gradually increase the tempo as your processing ability improves. Applications that allow variable playback speeds without distorting pitch are invaluable tools for this approach. Studies show that learners who practice with slightly slowed audio for 2 weeks before attempting natural speed content develop significantly better processing abilities than those who jump directly into native speed materials. Another common obstacle involves unfamiliar accents and dialectical variations. Many learners become comfortable with a particular variety of their target language, often the standard accent taught in language courses, only to feel completely lost when encountering regional variations. "I studied British English for years," shares Anna from Brazil. "Then I visited Scotland and couldn't understand a word. It was the same language I've been studying, but it sounded completely different. I nearly gave up in frustration." Accent adaptation requires deliberate exposure to varied speakers. Begin by listening to different accents delivering the same material. News broadcasts from various regions are particularly useful for this purpose. Identify the specific phonological differences between accents, vowel shifts, consonant variations, and prosodic patterns. With conscious attention to these patterns, your brain gradually develops flexibility in speech processing. Online platforms that curate content from different regions allow you to create a personalized accent training program, progressively introducing your ears to increasingly diverse pronunciations. Speech recognition technology can provide feedback on your own pronunciation as you mimic different accents, developing not just receptive but also productive familiarity with variations. Maintaining focus during extended listening represents another significant challenge. Many learners report that their attention drifts during longer audio segments, especially when encountering unfamiliar vocabulary or complex topics. This attention fatigue is a normal cognitive response, but it can significantly hamper comprehension development if not addressed. Mindfulness techniques offer powerful solutions to this challenge. Begin listening sessions with a brief focus exercise. 30 seconds of concentrated breathing can prepare your brain for sustained attention. During listening, implement the mental note-taking technique, actively labeling what you're hearing, introduction, main point, example, to maintain engagement with the content. For longer materials, the chunking approach proves effective. Divide content into 3 to 5 minute segments, listening actively, then taking a brief moment to summarize what you understood before continuing. This prevents the cumulative comprehension breakdown that often occurs when struggling with one section leads to missing subsequent content. Perhaps the most emotionally challenging obstacle is the frustration of partial comprehension. Understanding enough to know you're missing important information, but not enough to fill in the gaps. This liminal space between incomprehension and fluency can feel particularly discouraging, leading many learners to abandon authentic materials in favor of more controlled content. Cognitive reframing offers a powerful approach to this challenge. Rather than viewing partial comprehension as failure, recognize it as a necessary developmental stage, one that every successful language learner has navigated. Set realistic comprehension targets based on your current level. Beginners might aim to identify topic and tone, intermediate learners to grasp main points, and advanced learners to understand 80 to 90% of content, accepting that some details will initially remain unclear. The tolerance of ambiguity represents a critical psychological skill for language learners. Research from the University of Ottawa shows that learners with higher ambiguity tolerance, the ability to function effectively despite incomplete understanding, progress more rapidly in comprehension skills. Rather than becoming fixated on unknown words, these learners maintain focus on overall meaning, allowing context to gradually clarify ambiguities. Building persistence through small wins requires deliberate celebration of progress. Marcos, who now works as a simultaneous interpreter, recalls his approach. "I kept a listening journal where I noted each small breakthrough. The first time I understood a joke without translation. The first news broadcast where I grasped the main story." These concrete markers of progress sustain me through difficult periods. By anticipating these common obstacles and implementing targeted strategies to overcome them, you transform potential discouragement into productive challenges. Each barrier surmounted strengthens not just your language skills, but also your learning resilience, preparing you for the inevitable ups and downs of the language acquisition journey. The integration approach, combining listening with other skills. Listening exists not in isolation, but as part of an interconnected system of language skills. When strategically integrated with reading, speaking, and writing, listening creates synergistic effects that accelerate overall language development. This integration approach moves beyond compartmentalized practice to create a holistic language acquisition experience. The listening-reading connection provides a particularly powerful synergy. When these receptive skills work in tandem, they reinforce each other through complementary neural pathways. Research from the University of Toronto demonstrates that learners who combine listening and reading of the same material show 30% better retention than those who use either skill alone. Several integration techniques leverage this connection. The read then listen method involves first reading a text to understand content and vocabulary, then listening to the same text to associate written words with their spoken forms. Conversely, the listen then read approach challenges you to construct meaning from audio first, using subsequent reading to confirm comprehension and clarify uncertainties. David, who reached C2 proficiency in Spanish within 3 years, attributes his success to this integrated approach. "I would listen to a podcast episode without transcripts first, noting what I understood and what confused me. Then I'd read the transcript, connecting the written words to the sounds I had heard. Finally, I'd listen again, noticing how my comprehension improved dramatically now that my brain had made the sound symbol connections." The listening-speaking relationship forms another crucial integration point. Neurolinguistic research confirms that the same brain regions activate during both listening and speaking activities, creating a direct developmental relationship between comprehension and production. Put simply, effective speaking depends fundamentally on effective listening. The technique of reproductive listening bridges these skills. After listening to native speech samples, from single sentences to short paragraphs, immediately attempt to reproduce what you heard with the same intonation and rhythm. This practice develops not just pronunciation, but also the ability to hold and process language chunks in working memory, a critical skill for fluent conversation. Dialogue reconstruction takes this connection further. Listen to a conversation between native speakers, then work with a practice partner to recreate the exchange using your own words while maintaining the functional purpose of each turn. This activity builds both comprehension and conversational fluency simultaneously. Lisa, who teaches English to business professionals, explains, "Many of my students initially focused exclusively on speaking practice, but struggled with real conversations because they couldn't process their partner's responses quickly enough. Once we rebalance their practice to strengthen listening first, their speaking fluency improved automatically. They could respond appropriately because they truly understood what was being said. Perhaps less obvious but equally important is the listening-writing connection. The rhythms, expressions, and structures you absorb through listening unconsciously influence your written production. Extensive listening builds an internal model of how the language should sound, which translates into more natural written expression. Dictogloss exercises formalize this connection. Listen to a short passage several times, taking notes on key information, then attempt to reconstruct the complete text in writing. This activity trains your ability to extract essential content while absorbing natural phrasing and structure. Sebastian, who writes professionally in both English and German, notes, "My writing in German improved dramatically when I started listening to German podcasts daily. Without consciously trying, I began incorporating native-like expressions and sentence structures that I had absorbed through listening. My writing became less translated and more authentic." Creating a balanced language learning routine requires strategic integration of all these connections. A well-designed weekly schedule might include paired listening-reading activities with the same content, listening followed by speaking practice on the same topics, dictation exercises connecting listening and writing, content-based learning where a single subject is explored through all four skills. Technology facilitates this integration through platforms that seamlessly combine multiple skill modalities. Language learning apps that synchronize audio with text, provide speech recognition for pronunciation feedback, and offer writing exercises based on listening content create a unified learning environment that reflects the interconnected nature of language skills. The integration approach also extends to content selection. Thematic learning, focusing all skill practice around a single topic area for a period of time, creates powerful reinforcement effects. When you read, listen, speak, and write about the same subject area, vocabulary and concepts receive multiple exposures through different channels, dramatically improving retention and accessibility. By consciously implementing these integration strategies, you create an accelerated learning cycle where each skill reinforces and enhances the others. Rather than developing language abilities in isolation, this holistic approach mirrors how languages naturally function as integrated communication systems where listening, speaking, reading, and writing work in constant interplay. Measuring progress. How to know you're improving. One of the most challenging aspects of developing listening skills is tracking your progress. Unlike vocabulary memorization or grammar mastery, which can be easily quantified through tests, listening improvement often happens gradually and sometimes imperceptibly. How do you know if your comprehension is actually improving? What benchmarks indicate meaningful progress beyond subjective feelings? Traditional assessment methods like comprehension tests provide one measurement approach, but they often fail to capture the nuanced development of real-world listening ability. A more comprehensive progress tracking system combines objective assessments with self-reflection and practical benchmarks that reflect authentic language use. Signs of listening improvement extend far beyond test scores. The first indicator often appears as decreased mental fatigue when listening. Early-stage learners typically report exhaustion after even short listening sessions as their brains work overtime to process unfamiliar sound patterns. When you notice that you can listen for longer periods without the same mental strain, this signals improved neural efficiency. Your brain is processing the language more automatically, requiring less conscious effort. Another reliable progress marker involves the density of what you can comprehend. Beginning listeners often understand isolated words or phrases, with significant gaps between recognizable elements. As your skills develop, these islands of comprehension gradually connect, creating more continuous understanding with fewer gaps. Tracking the percentage of content you understand in standardized materials provides a quantitative measure of this development. Maria, who documented her Japanese listening journey through regular assessments, explains her approach. Every month, I would listen to the same 5-minute news broadcast that I had saved at the beginning of my learning journey. I tracked how much I understood, from about 10% initially to over 90% after 18 months. This concrete measurement helped me recognize progress even during periods when I felt stuck. Self-assessment techniques offer valuable complementary measures. The paraphrase test involves listening to short content segments, then attempting to summarize what you heard in your own words. Recording these summaries over time provides tangible evidence of improving comprehension depth and accuracy. Another self-assessment approach uses the prediction gap as a progress indicator. Proficient listeners can anticipate what comes next in speech based on context and language patterns. By deliberately pausing audio and attempting to predict the next sentence or phrase, then checking your prediction against the actual content, you can measure how your predictive ability, a key component of fluent comprehension, is developing. Tracking specific comprehension milestones creates another practical measurement framework. These milestones might include: first time understanding a joke or humorous reference, first complete song lyrics comprehended without reading, first movie scene fully understood without subtitles, first phone conversation completed successfully, first group discussion where you followed multiple speakers. These concrete experiences often provide more meaningful progress markers than abstract assessments, as they reflect real-world language application rather than controlled test environments. Digital tools can enhance traditional tracking methods. Apps that measure your comprehension of increasingly difficult content through questions and recall activities provide standardized progress metrics. Voice recognition technology that assesses your pronunciation accuracy when repeating what you've heard offers another quantifiable dimension of listening development. Perhaps most importantly, effective progress measurement requires establishing appropriate benchmarks based on your current level. Expecting near-perfect comprehension of authentic materials as a beginner sets an unrealistic standard that leads to discouragement. Instead, level-appropriate targets might include: beginner, identifying keywords and general topic in simplified content. Intermediate, understanding main points and supporting details in structured materials. Advanced, comprehending implicit meanings, cultural references, and speaker attitudes in authentic content. Celebrating small victories plays a crucial psychological role in sustained progress. The improvement journey contains what psychologists call perception gaps, periods where your skills are actually improving, but you don't perceive the change. During these plateaus, concrete evidence of progress through documented assessments helps maintain motivation. Thomas, who teaches listening skills to corporate language learners, shares, "I have my students record themselves describing what they understood from a podcast each month. Even when they feel frustrated with their progress, playing back these recordings from several months earlier provides unmistakable evidence of how far they've come." By implementing a multidimensional tracking system that combines objective measures, self-assessments, milestone experiences, and appropriate benchmarks, you create a progress map that guides your continued development. This systematic approach transforms listening improvement from a vague aspiration to a clearly defined journey, with visible signposts marking your advancement. The listener's advantage in a connected world. In our increasingly globalized society, superior listening skills provide a distinctive competitive advantage that extends far beyond language classrooms. As international collaboration becomes the norm rather than the exception, those who have mastered the art of truly hearing others across languages, cultures, and communication styles, possess an invaluable asset in both personal and professional spheres. The journey from struggling language learner to confident communicator follows a predictable pattern. In the earliest stages, listening comprehension consumes enormous mental resources, leaving little capacity for response formulation. As listening becomes more automatic through dedicated practice, cognitive resources are freed for other aspects of communication: vocabulary selection, grammar construction, and cultural appropriateness. Elena, who now works as a multilingual conference interpreter, recalls this transformation. "I remember the day I realized I was no longer translating in my head while listening to Spanish. Suddenly, understanding required so little effort that I could simultaneously think about how to respond, observe body language, and even appreciate humor. That's when I knew I had crossed the threshold from language student to language user." This liberation from processing constraints explains why strong listeners ultimately become confident speakers. When comprehension happens effortlessly, all your mental resources can focus on expression. The most fluent conversationalists are invariably those who have developed superior listening capabilities first. Their speaking flows naturally because it builds upon a foundation of comprehensive input. Beyond language learning itself, advanced listening skills transfer to numerous real-world applications. Research from the Harvard Business Review identifies listening proficiency as one of the top predictors of leadership effectiveness across industries and cultures. Leaders who listen well make better decisions, build stronger teams, and navigate complex intercultural environments more successfully. In professional contexts, the listener's advantage manifests in multiple ways. During negotiations, skilled listeners detect subtle shifts in position and underlying interests that others miss. In collaborative projects, they synthesize diverse perspectives into cohesive action plans. In client relationships, they identify unstated needs and concerns, creating solutions that address root issues rather than surface symptoms. Carlos, who built a successful international consulting business after mastering 3 languages, attributes his professional achievement primarily to listening skills. "My technical knowledge is no better than many competitors. What differentiates my service is my ability to truly understand clients, not just their words, but their priorities, concerns, and cultural context. This deeper comprehension allows me to provide tailored solutions that precisely address their specific situation." The digital revolution has further amplified the listener's advantage. In a world of increasing automation, distinctly human capabilities like nuanced understanding, empathy, and cultural sensitivity become premium skills. Voice-based interfaces, international video conferencing, and multilingual media consumption all require advanced listening abilities that transcend basic comprehension. Neurological research reveals another fascinating dimension of the listener's advantage: cognitive flexibility. Brain imaging studies show that individuals with developed listening skills in multiple languages demonstrate enhanced executive function, including superior attention control, cognitive inhibition, and task-switching abilities. These cognitive benefits extend beyond language context to improve problem-solving capabilities across domains. For language learners specifically, the culmination of the listening journey brings a profound shift in identity, from outsider struggling to comprehend to insider who participates fully in the language community. This transition often occurs gradually and then suddenly, as accumulated listening experience reaches a critical threshold where comprehension becomes effortless. Marta describes this transformation in her relationship with English. "After years of study, I still felt like English was a foreign object I was manipulating. Then one summer, after intensive listening practice, something changed. English became a part of me. Not something I was studying, but something I was using to express myself authentically. The language had finally become mine. This sense of ownership represents the ultimate goal of language acquisition. The point where a second language becomes not just a communication tool, but a genuine means of self-expression. Listening forms the bridge to this transformation, providing the extensive input necessary for the language to become internalized rather than merely learned. As you continue your listening journey, remember that you're developing not just a language skill, but a life skill. The same attention, patience, and openness that allow you to truly hear another language enable you to truly hear other people, their perspectives, emotions, and unique experiences. In a world often characterized by communication without comprehension, the ability to listen deeply represents not just a linguistic achievement, but a human one. Your next step involves applying the principles and techniques we've explored in consistent, deliberate practice. Start with just 10 minutes of focused listening daily, gradually increasing duration and complexity as your skills develop. Remember that neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to form new connections, responds to consistent input over time. The journey to listening mastery unfolds one ear-opening experience at a time. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the transformative power of listening in language learning. I hope these insights have inspired you to reconsider the role of listening in your own language journey and provided practical tools to enhance your skills. If you found this information valuable, please take a moment to like this video and share it with fellow language learners who might benefit from these strategies. Your support helps our content reach more people struggling with the same challenges you've faced. Don't forget to subscribe to the LMJ English channel for weekly videos on language acquisition techniques, pronunciation guides, and engaging stories designed to accelerate your English fluency. Click the notification bell to stay updated on our latest uploads. Would you like to share your own listening experiences or success stories? Drop a comment below. I read every single one and love hearing about your language learning journeys. Perhaps you have a specific listening challenge you're struggling with? Let us know, and we might address it in an upcoming video. Until next time, keep opening your ears to the beautiful sounds of English. Remember, every minute you spend listening is building those crucial neural pathways to fluency. The world of natural, confident English communication awaits you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in our next video. Take care and happy listening. Vocabulary list. Acquisition. Now in the process of gaining knowledge or learning a skill. Example. Language acquisition happens more naturally through consistent exposure rather than memorization. Prosody. Noun the patterns of rhythm, stress, and intonation in a language. Example. Mastering the prosody of English helps you sound more natural when speaking. Immersion. Noun the state of being deeply involved in a particular activity or interest. Example. Language immersion means surrounding yourself completely with the target language. Neuroplasticity. Noun the brain's ability to form new connections and pathways. Example. Thanks to neuroplasticity, consistent language practice physically changes your brain. Comprehension. Noun the ability to understand something. Example. Listening comprehension improves significantly with regular practice and exposure. Fluency. Noun the ability to speak or write a language easily, smoothly, and expressively. Example. His fluency in English impressed everyone at the international conference. Proficiency. Noun a high degree of skill or expertise. Example. Her proficiency in multiple languages made her an excellent translator. Cognition. Noun the mental process of acquiring knowledge through thought, experience, and the senses. Example. Language learning enhances cognition and improves memory. Retention. Noun, the ability to keep or hold something in memory. Example. Active listening leads to better vocabulary retention than passive reading. Cadence. Noun, the rhythmic flow of sounds and language. Example. Each language has its unique cadence that gives it a distinctive sound. Shadowing. Verb, the practice of repeating what someone says immediately after they say it. Example. Shadowing native speakers helps you master natural speech patterns. Assimilate. Verb, to take in and understand information or ideas. Example. Listening to podcasts helps you assimilate new vocabulary and context. Innate. Adjective, natural or inborn, not learned. Example. Humans have an innate ability to recognize speech patterns. Nuance. Noun, a subtle difference in meaning, expression, or sound. Example. Only through extensive listening can you grasp the nuances of idiomatic expressions. Attune. Verb, to make receptive or aware. Example. Regular listening practice attunes your ear to natural speech rhythms. Polyglot. Noun, a person who knows and can use several languages. Example. She's a remarkable polyglot who speaks 6 languages fluently. Progressive. Adjective, happening or developing gradually or in stages. Example. Language learning is a progressive journey that requires patience. Ambiguity. Noun, the quality of being open to more than one interpretation. Example. Developing tolerance for ambiguity is crucial when listening to authentic materials. Perception. Noun, the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. Example. Listening training sharpens your perception of subtle sound differences. Metacognition. Noun, awareness and understanding of one's own thought processes. Example. Developing metacognition helps you recognize when your listening comprehension is breaking down. Example. The acquisition of a second language depends greatly on your ability to develop strong listening skills.